What if everything you've been taught about love is missing the most important piece? What if the man who truly feels something for you, the one whose heart beats louder every time he hears your name, never says a word about it? In a world obsessed with grand gestures and loud declarations, we've lost sight of the quiet truths. There's a hidden language most women have never learned to read. And because of that, they miss the moments when a man's soul is trying to speak, not with words, but through silences, glances, and choices that seem insignificant on the surface, but carry the weight of deep emotional connection underneath. This isn't about seduction. It's not about game. This is about truth. What's really happening in a man's unconscious mind when he meets a woman who touches him beyond logic, beyond desire. Today, we open the door to that truth. Carl Jung, one of the most respected voices in psychology, discovered something powerful, yet almost entirely overlooked in modern relationships. When a man truly falls for a woman, not just in lust or fantasy, but on a deep emotional level, his unconscious mind begins to send out signals. These signals are raw, involuntary, and impossible to fake. But here's the tragedy. Most women have been trained to look for the wrong signs. We're conditioned to listen for promises, compliments, and carefully chosen words, when in fact the truth is hiding in the quiet, in the way he looks at you when you're not watching, in how he adjusts his world, without fanfare, to keep you in it. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it's real. Have you ever had that strange feeling, like something doesn't quite match between what a man says and what you sense? Maybe he tells you he's interested, but his actions vanish into silence. Or maybe he's never actually voiced how he feels, but there's something in the way he looks at you, something you can't explain. That's not your imagination. That's your unconscious catching what your rational mind misses. It's one of the most underrated powers we have, the ability to perceive emotional truth beneath the surface. And it's time we start trusting that instinct. This isn't about fantasy. It's about decoding a real psychological phenomenon. Jung devoted his life to understanding. Jung believed that within every man there lives a powerful archetype, the lover. When this part of his psyche is activated, his entire being changes. His emotions deepen, his gestures shift, his presence becomes charged with meaning. He can't fake it, even if he tries. It's not something conscious. It's a primal force emerging from the deepest part of his unconscious mind. When this happens, it's not just about physical desire. It's about recognition. He sees something in you that resonates with his soul. He might not understand it. He might not even want it, but he feels it, and that changes everything. These are not signs taught in popular relationship advice. These are truths hidden in human psychology. So why don't most women see these signs? Because they're watching the wrong screen. They expect fireworks, bold moves, or spoken affirmations. Meanwhile, the truth hides in the quiet ways he shows up, in the small but consistent behaviors that say, "You matter to me," even when he hasn't said the words. Jung's work revealed that love speaks in patterns, subtle shifts in behavior, body language, memory, and presence. If you learn to read them, you'll never again feel lost in confusion or question a man's real intentions. You'll know not because he told you, but because everything about him is already telling the truth. It's strange how something so powerful can be so silent. When a man is emotionally involved, he doesn't always say it out loud. In fact, the deeper the emotion, the more likely it is to emerge in ways he can't control. This is where Carl Jung's brilliance comes into play. He revealed that love, real love, isn't announced with fireworks. It seeps through a man's unconscious, shaping his behaviors in ways he may not even be aware of. And that's the beauty of it. You don't need to be told. You can learn to see it. His posture shifts when you're near. His priorities realign. His world gently adjusts to make space for you, not as a guest, but as someone who belongs. This isn't about romance in the way Hollywood sells it. This is about unconscious truths whispering through behavior. Think about the man who says all the right things, who calls you beautiful, makes promises, but never shows up when it matters. Then think about the one who might not have said much at all. Yet he's always there, present, consistent, and attentive. The world tells us to listen to words, but Jung teaches us to observe patterns. A man's unconscious speaks in ritual. If you notice, he remembers the small things. Your favorite coffee, the way you brush your hair back when you're nervous, the book you once mentioned in passing. These are signs of psychic presence. You've made a home in his mind, and that space wasn't created by accident. It was carved out by something he may not understand, but deeply feel. And then there's that moment, the glance. Not the typical flirty stare, but the kind of look that holds you. His eyes find you in a room full of noise. Not because he's trying to, but because some part of him is drawn. Jung said the eyes are the gateway to the unconscious. They reveal what the mouth can't say. Prolonged eye contact, dilated pupils, that subtle shift in focus when you're near. It's all involuntary. He may not even notice it himself, but his nervous system has already registered something significant. Love begins here, in the seconds that stretch longer than they should, in the glances that linger after you've looked away. This is not fantasy. It's neuroscience and psychology, working together to reveal emotional truth. Now consider his time, how he spends it, where he spends it, and with whom. A man who is emotionally involved will instinctively reorganize his life to include you, not because you asked, not because he's obligated, but because your presence brings meaning. Jung's research found that the unconscious compels us to gravitate toward those who activate our inner archetypes. The lover archetype, once awakened, becomes a magnetic force. You'll find that he begins to prioritize you in subtle but unmistakable ways. He remembers your schedule. He checks in when you're quiet. He shows up not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. These shifts aren't planned. They're unconscious reactions to emotional depth. And there's space, physical space. Watch how he orients himself around you. In group settings, his body leans toward you. His feet face you. He mirrors your gestures without realizing it. These are all unconscious cues of connection. He reduces the space between you not because he's making a move, but because something inside him wants closeness. When you casually touch his arm, the reaction is real, slightly elevated breathing, a subtle change in posture, a warmth that lingers. These aren't signs you can script. They emerge from a biological response to connection. What Jung and modern science alike recognize as the body's truth-telling mechanism. In a world filled with words, this kind of language never lies. Sometimes, the most powerful proof of love is what a man remembers. Not the big, obvious things, but the small, fragile details that others forget. Jung understood that our unconscious filters reality, keeping only what holds emotional meaning. So, when a man recalls something you said weeks ago, or notices the tiniest change in your appearance, it's not because he's trying to impress you. It's because you matter to him on a level he may not even understand. His mind naturally stores pieces of you, like fragments of a dream he doesn't want to lose. That's the difference between interest and emotional investment. Interest fades. Investment leaves a mark. If he brings up a memory you barely recall sharing, understand it didn't just pass through him, it stayed. And that tells you more than any spoken promise ever could. Real connection isn't built in moments of excitement, but in the quiet vulnerability of shared truths. Jung said that love demands the courage to be seen. When a man begins to reveal his fears, his failures, and his deepest hopes, not just his strengths, that's when the bond becomes real. Most men are raised behind walls. Don't cry, be tough, never show weakness. So when he lets you see behind that wall, even for a second, don't underestimate it. He's not being dramatic, he's being brave. It might come out awkwardly. A story about his childhood, a moment of doubt about his career, a dream he never told anyone. But if he's showing you his inner world, even in fragments, it's because he feels safe in your presence, and that's one of the most powerful signs of love. There's another clue that speaks louder than words: how he weaves you into his world. A man who is emotionally invested doesn't keep you in the background. He brings you forward into his life, his friends, his family. He doesn't hide you. He highlights you. You're not just a secret chapter in his story. You're becoming a part of the narrative itself. Jung noticed that when we truly connect with someone, we begin to integrate them into our identity. That's why a man in love will talk about you when you're not around. He'll bring you up in conversations. He'll introduce you to the people who matter most. You'll find yourself sitting at the table, not just next to him, but as part of his life. This isn't an obligation. It's instinct. He's proud to be with you, and he wants the world to know. And then there's the future. Listen carefully, not just to what he says, but to what he envisions. When a man is emotionally involved, he naturally begins to see you in his future without even trying. It slips into the conversation, a trip he wants to take with you, an event he assumes you'll attend together, plans that stretch months or even years ahead. He doesn't need to make a big speech. The inclusion is effortless. That's how you know it's real. Jung believed our unconscious mind paints visions of the future with those we feel deeply bonded to. If he talks about you being part of his dreams, his plans, his life, it's because in his inner world, you're already there. This isn't about pressure. It's about alignment. His mind has accepted what his heart already knew. You belong in his tomorrow. Lastly, we come to the instinct of protection. Not control, not possessiveness, but a quiet, unwavering desire to make sure you're okay. Jung described a powerful inner mechanism that activates when a man sees someone as truly valuable. He doesn't need to be told to care. He just does. He checks in when you're quiet. He notices when something feels off. He steps in when you're overwhelmed, not to take over, but to stand beside you. It might be subtle, a hand on your back when you're anxious, walking on the side of traffic, or staying up late just to make sure you got home safe. These aren't tactics. They're signs. Signs that his heart has placed you at the center of his attention. He protects what he values, not with force, but with presence, with consistency, with care that asks for nothing in return. Consistency. It's one of the most underrated yet revealing signs of genuine emotional involvement. Carl Jung emphasized that while many behaviors can be faked for a short period, the truth always surfaces with time. This is where so many women get caught in emotional cycles, believing intensity means authenticity. But true love, real connection, doesn't come in waves. It flows. A man who is emotionally invested doesn't show up with fireworks only to disappear in silence. He remains. He checks in, not just when it's convenient, but when it counts. You don't feel anxious wondering where he stands, because his behavior tells you every day. That's the quiet power of love rooted in the unconscious. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply remains present, calm, and reliable. Not out of obligation, but because his heart has found its rhythm with yours. Think about the emotional roller coasters we often mistake for passion. Hot today, cold tomorrow. Jung would say, that's not love. It's chaos, disguised as chemistry. When a man is truly emotionally connected, you won't feel like you're chasing answers. You won't be left decoding mixed messages or replaying conversations in your mind for clues. Why? Because his actions align with his feelings. He's consistent, not because he's trying to win you over, but because being in your life feels natural to him. His unconscious has already chosen. His mind, body, and emotions are working together, not pulling in opposite directions. He doesn't just talk about being there. He shows up. He doesn't disappear when things get hard. He leans in. That's what real involvement looks like. And here's where things get even more powerful. When you begin to recognize these signs, these unconscious truths, you stop settling for anything less. Jung believed that awareness is transformation. Once your mind understands how real emotional connection works, it becomes impossible to accept confusion as love. You no longer fall for promises made in empty moments. You start listening to your intuition, the soft whisper within that has always tried to protect you. The one that notices when something is off, even when everything looks perfect on the surface. You begin to trust that inner knowing more than the words you hear. And that shift, when your perception sharpens, is the moment you reclaim your power in relationship. So, how do you apply this knowledge in your own life? It begins by observing, not obsessing. Look not just at what he says, but what he does consistently over time. Is there effort without prompting? Is there presence without pressure? Does he hold space for your emotions? Or just try to silence them? And most importantly, does his energy make you feel safe, valued, and seen, not just occasionally, but regularly? These aren't lofty ideals. They're the foundation of emotional intimacy. Jung's teachings weren't just about understanding others. They were about learning to trust ourselves again, to listen to what our unconscious already knows, even when our heart is tempted to believe otherwise. You see, emotional clarity is a gift, but it requires courage, because once you truly understand what a genuinely involved man looks like, you can no longer ignore the red flags you once overlooked. You'll find yourself walking away from situations that lack depth, not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. Jung believed that love isn't just about connection, it's about evolution. When a man loves you from the depth of his unconscious, it isn't just romantic, it's transformational. And that kind of love only grows where there's honesty, openness, and the willingness to show up without pretense. When you recognize these signs, you don't just identify real love, you learn how to rise with it. Let's pause and reflect on something powerful. Many women spend years chasing words, waiting for signs, hoping for change, when the truth was always right in front of them. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious mind picks up what the conscious mind ignores. It's that inner tug you feel when something's not right, even if nothing is obviously wrong. Maybe you've been in a relationship where the man said all the right things, but you constantly felt unsettled. Or maybe you walked away from someone who rarely spoke his feelings, but whose actions always showed up in love. That wasn't confusion. That was your unconscious trying to speak. And once you learn to trust it, you become immune to emotional illusion. You stop falling for potential and start honoring what's real, what's shown, not just spoken. There's something deeply liberating about this shift. You no longer chase affection. You no longer convince yourself to hold on a little longer, to wait for him to become the man you believe he could be. Instead, you begin to observe from a place of inner power. Jung emphasized that the unconscious doesn't lie. It's always sending signals through the eyes, the body, the decisions made without thinking. When a man is truly emotionally connected to you, everything about him subtly changes. His routine shifts. His values bend toward inclusion. His silences become safe, not cold. That's the level of connection you're meant to experience, not anxiety disguised as romance, but peace rooted in presence. And here's where many people get stuck. What if he shows some signs, but not all? What if you're unsure whether it's real or just fleeting interest? Jung would remind us that emotional truth reveals itself through consistency. Not perfection, but presence. Not intensity, but stability. One true act of vulnerability means more than 100 poetic messages. One genuine effort to understand you holds more weight than 1,000 apologies. Emotional connection isn't built on extremes. It's found in the steady rhythm of care, attention, and truth. So, ask yourself, does he show up when it's hard? Does he remember the things that matter to you? Does he make you feel like you belong? Not just physically, but emotionally. It's also important to be honest with yourself. If the signs aren't there, if you're constantly uncertain, confused, or waiting for change, it may be time to stop hoping and start seeing. Not from a place of bitterness, but from clarity. Because as Jung said, true love cannot be forced. It reveals itself naturally. When a man truly feels that connection, he doesn't need reminders to show up. His unconscious pulls him toward you. It makes you a priority in a way that is beyond logic. And when it's not there, no amount of effort on your part can create it. That's not your fault. That's simply the absence of alignment. And realizing this isn't a loss, it's freedom. The freedom to stop investing in something that was never rooted in emotional truth. But this knowledge also comes with responsibility. When you do find a man who consistently demonstrates these unconscious signs, who opens himself to you, shows up, includes you, protects you, don't retreat out of fear. Don't guard your heart so tightly that you miss the opportunity for something real. Jung believed love is a dance between two souls willing to meet in vulnerability. If he's showing up with honesty, don't meet him with walls. Meet him with your own truth. Because when two people both live from that level of awareness, love becomes a mirror. It reveals not just who the other is, but who you are at your core. That's the kind of connection that changes everything, not just your relationship, but your life. When you understand the signs of true emotional involvement, everything changes. You no longer feel confused by mixed signals, nor do you get swept away by shallow words. You begin to see clearly through the lens of Carl Jung's wisdom and your own awakened intuition. And perhaps, most importantly, you stop settling for relationships that feel like emotional puzzles. Because now, you know the difference between attraction and alignment, between attention and devotion. The man who is truly emotionally involved doesn't make you guess. He doesn't send you spinning into cycles of doubt. He shows up consistently, quietly, and with an energy that makes you feel emotionally safe. And that kind of man, that kind of love, is more rare than most realize. When you find it, hold it with care. When you don't, let go with grace. But this knowledge doesn't just protect your heart, it empowers your mind. It makes you immune to manipulation, immune to false promises, immune to the emotional limbo so many women get stuck in. Because now you've seen the truth. You've understood that a man's unconscious will always reveal what his words may try to hide. His eyes will seek you even when his lips stay silent. His actions will lean toward you, even if he's afraid to admit what he feels. And his soul, guided by forces he can't explain, will pull him closer to you if the connection is real. No amount of strategy, no amount of waiting, can replace that natural alignment. That's the power of unconscious love. It isn't built through effort, it's revealed through presence. Jung believed that when a man meets the embodiment of his anima, the idealized image of the feminine buried deep within his psyche, it activates a transformation within him. He begins to see not just a woman but a mirror of his own inner world. And you, the woman he connects with, begin to awaken something sacred in him. This is not about control. It's not about changing him. It's about witnessing his truth if his behavior reflects those deep archetypal signs, emotional vulnerability, consistent presence, intuitive protection, selective memory, and genuine future inclusion. You are witnessing the unconscious at work, not fantasy, not projection, but a soul-level recognition that defies explanation. You don't need to force it, you just need to recognize it. And now that you know all 8 signs, you're equipped with something far more powerful than charm or seduction. You're equipped with wisdom, the ability to look at a man's behavior and see not what you hope, but what truly is. The ability to walk away from confusion and choose clarity. To stop romanticizing potential and start honoring presence. To stop begging for love and start attracting what already recognizes your worth. This doesn't mean every man who shows up consistently is your soulmate, but it does mean you now have the tools to discern the difference between an unconscious connection and a convenient illusion, and that difference will shape your entire future. So ask yourself now, have you ever seen these signs in someone's behavior toward you? Have you ignored them, or worse, have you ignored their absence and clung to promises instead? This is your moment to step back and reflect. Jung said the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. You deserve a love that transforms you, a connection that calls you deeper into yourself, a relationship that doesn't just meet your needs, but honors your soul. And when that kind of love appears, you won't have to chase it. You'll recognize it in the consistency, in the safety, in the silence between the words. So, if this message has opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Talk about it. Spread the truth. So many women are walking around believing they're unworthy, when in reality, they're just misunderstood. Sometimes, one piece of real insight can save someone from years of heartbreak. Let this be that moment for you, and for someone else. And if this awakening has sparked a curiosity inside you about how love truly works, why some connections feel cosmic while others fall flat, don't stop here. Because, as Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now that you've seen the truth, you can choose your fate with clarity, courage, and love. If this message awakens something deep within you, don't ignore it. Honor it. Comment "perception" below to claim your clarity, and never mistake attraction for real emotional connection again. Share this with a woman you care about, because one truth at the right time can protect a heart for a lifetime.